What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and analyze some deals. Now, before we get going on finding deals, the number one thing that we need to do is know what we're looking at. And we need to know these 5 things. We truly do. You have to know these 5 things. Remember, we're not going to be pulling listings off of LoopNet and sending us listing ID numbers. That's not the way it's done. You have to take the information, process it onto the property information sheet for the right property type, and then what we do is we quickly analyze a deal, separate the trash from the cash. So regardless if you're a buyer, seller, or broker, we all need to know these 5 things, regardless. Okay? This is going to cut years off your learning curve and make it easy so you can quickly make it happen. Does that excite you guys? Yes. It should, guys, because I know investors out there, they take weeks, months, and sometimes even a quarter of a year just going through a deal, deciding if it's a prospect or a suspect. So I think it's very powerful for you guys to understand that this is going to excel your learning curve. So the first one is the as-is value. All right, you're going to take plenty of notes in this section because there's a lot of information that you need to process. Okay, the as-is value. You must know what the property is worth before you could ever make an offer on it. That's the as-is value, as-is where's, in its current state, in its current condition. If time or circumstances do not allow you to order an appraisal, what we do is something called pre-contract due diligence. And who we speak with is the broker to get comps. The reason being is because they're very knowledgeable. My broker right over here, she knows. She knows that before she can go sell something as a broker, because brokers are salespeople, they need to know the information. They need to do their pre-contract due diligence because questions are going to come up from the seller. And they have to be able to present that property to the best of their ability to make sure that they get the sale. Because in a broker's world, no commission means no food on the plate. Okay? So understanding that, we buy as is in its current condition. As it sits in its current condition. If it's a rehab, and it's trashed. Kevin said squishy carpets. That means he's buying it with squishy carpets. He's not buying it with new carpets, okay? He's not buying it with tenants in each unit. He's buying it 100% vacant, okay? He's buying it with possible shrubbery in the front where you can't even see the front of the building or what it looks like, not the after effect when he brought in a tree trimmer to cut the trees, to put up some shutters, and to paint them, okay? We don't buy on hope or speculation ever. Now, I continue to repeat myself about that because it's so very important that you understand, because I constantly get students that bring deals through the pipeline and they say, but look, the future value is going to be $10 million and we're getting the thing for $5. And I say, that's great. It's 50 cents on the dollar, but it takes $6 million to get the thing up and running. It's not a deal. It's got to meet the criteria, the double, triple rule criteria. Okay, and that means that we don't buy on hope or speculation. We can all get very excited about deals when we're looking. And LoopNet's definitely not the only site. We're going to take time. We're going to go and we're going to jump on all kinds of different websites. We're going to show you how you can pull all kinds of great terms, just like LoopNet has a key search field, which we're going to show you, where you can pull up properties with seller financing. I'm going to show you how you can pull up seller financing and all kinds of different keywords like motivated seller. Okay, seller must sell, divorce, things of that nature. On any website out there, if it's listed on the website, okay? The next is the ARV and the ADV, all right? Now, ARV is after repaired value and ADV is after developed value. You have to know what the property is going to be worth at its highest and best use. Write highest and best use down on your page and put a circle around it because that's the key that unlocks the vault. And remember, under the same premise, if it's already at its highest and best use, then that means it's more than likely going to be a retail deal unless we can fix a few things, which we're going to cover later. You have to know what its highest and best use is going to be before you can ever consider putting an offer on it, because you need to know what the future value is going to be after you fix it up or get the vacancies up. All right. Now, when it comes to buildings, the ARV, the after repaired value, is the value in fair to good condition and 100% occupied, or right next to this, write down, right next to where it says 100% occupied, write down to market occupancy. Because not always, guys, are we going to be able to get these properties at 100% occupancy. Now, if the market just doesn't house 100% occupancy, you want to get it at its market occupancy. You follow? Okay. Now, with land, the ADV, the after developed value, is the value of what it's going to be worth right now where is, as is, and then what it's going to be worth after you put it to its highest and best use. or subdivided, of course, when we're talking about land. So that's the after developed value. Now we're going to discuss development in a whole and spend time on that. We're going to spend a lot of time on development, even though this is the cash flow system, because if we can get in there and do horizontal infrastructure, you can get a value bump, and we can start having it cash flow by doing additional build outs, build to suits, and getting creative by putting some additional things on land, and then land will actually be cash flowing. But that's ARV, after repaired value, and ADV, after developed value, in a nutshell. Now, when we're talking about asking, that's obviously the asking price. That's what they're asking for the property. If you ever run into a seller or a broker that doesn't know what they're asking for the property, you better go ahead and really take a hard look at that thing, because you're more than likely going to be dealing with somebody who says, I don't know, give me a price. You name the price first. Either they're going to be super motivated and going to be selling for what they owe, or they're super unmotivated and they're just fishing. Okay? And we don't bite on hooks when people are fishing. We just don't. And my broker's over there, she's shaking her head yes, because she knows that a lot of people do that. They'll just go and say, look, I really don't want to sell, but let's just see what happens. Let me give you an example. I was in Florida a couple months ago, and it was in Tampa. I was with my wife, and we're driving down the street. And some of those homes are really large, and they're new construction. And I noticed that some of those new construction homes, they were selling them aggressively. There was a house next door to one, and it had a humongous lot. It was like 180 feet of deep water frontage on the corner overlooking the whole bay. It was beautiful. The house was a piece of junk. House could have been leveled. It was a one-story 50 style. But the guy had a for sale by owner sign, a FSBO sign out front. So I called, and I said, hey, I'm an investor, and I'm just interested to know, what are you asking for the property? He's like, well, let me ask you, are you from around here? I go, I'm just wondering what you're asking for the property. And he's like, giving me the runaround. Well, do you know what's going on here? Trying to sell me. Oh, it's all this new construction. It's right on the bay. 100. I said, sir, I'm actually sitting right out in front of your property. I know what's around you. I just was wondering how much you're asking for the property. Well, what do you think the property's worth? I'm like, do you want to sell your property? Are you an investor holding? Are you a broker? What's your deal? And he's like, oh, I'm just having it out there because everybody else has for sale by owner signs on. So I'm just seeing if anybody's coming along and offer me more than what I have in the property, and just wanted to see what you'd be willing to pay for it. I said, have a nice day. Let's get off the phone. It's a waste of time. But these are the type of people that are out there in the commercial world too. They're no different than the residential. Why wouldn't you want to know what somebody's willing to pay? All right? And one of the things that we do as soon as we close, quite often, we'll put the property back on LoopNet just to see what somebody will offer. And we'll put creative terms. And I've had my students submit my own deals to me. And then the real quiz comes in. What would you pay? So they know. But we do that, and the reason being is because, of course, we want to know the value. But you just need to be able to determine that quickly if it's a time-wasting prospect or if it's something to pursue. So the asking is very, very important. Anytime you're gathering facts on the property, whether you're dealing with the broker or the owner, if they will not disclose how much they want, they're a time-wasting suspect, hands down. You just got to ask them. And we know what we say when we ask, don't we? You guys know the rule. One of the rules is if we paid all cash and close quickly, what's the least you'd accept? Well, in commercial, we don't really say that. In commercial, it's more like you find out how much they owe, and then you either insult them with a real lowball offer, and if you're not comfortable with insulting, don't worry, I'll take care of that for you. I don't mind. I've been in the game way too long, and actually sellers either chuckle, and you'll be surprised on some of the answers. And then what do? We think to ourselves, well, what if they just gave us the property? Do we really want it? What are we going to do with it? How are we going to make money with it? Because that's our train of thought. That's how we reprogram our minds. If we get the thing for free, can we make money with it? You guys understand that? Okay, capiche. All right. Often the offer you make will be determined from the debt owed. I think it's always going to be determined by the debt owed. Look, let's just say you don't know. Excuse me 1 second. I want to make one last point here. The asking price compared to the ARV or the ADV is the easiest way to tell if it's a real deal. The difference between the two, okay? The asking price compared to the ARV. So in other words, what they're asking and what it's going to be worth later. The bigger the gap, the better. All right? The larger the gap between the two, the better the prospect. That's easy, guys. Okay? I can't make that any easier. Now, here's the loan amount. when we're talking about what's owed on the property, all right, the first thing that we need to do is determine exactly what's owed. Does anybody here feel that you're going to get hung up on the fact that you might have trouble finding out how much is owed on a big commercial property? Anybody? No? A couple people? Thank you for your honesty. Look, guys, a lot of people are, and a lot of people don't want to admit it. And then what happens is a lot of people don't think that they will, but then it'll be in their mindset. And then once it's in your mindset and you're on the phone and you hesitate a little bit at that one point when you want to ask them how much they owe on their property, then you foul it up. Okay? Understand it's numbers. It's just numbers. It's totally irrelevant. The way we do it is we say, look, we're obviously not retail buyers. I just tell them straight out. I go, look, I'm just not looking to buy retail. That's just not the way we do it. If you're looking for a retail buyer, for somebody to come in and put down all kinds of cash on your property, and I'm not saying I won't put skin in the game showing good faith, but I am saying that if you're looking for somebody to come in and put down tons of cash, deal. Remember, we're looking for problem properties. We're solving problems. I'm not your guy or I'm not your gal. And I'm going to go ahead and construct this deal. The way I'm going to construct it is I'm going to go ahead, come in, fix the problem, close on it, make it happen, and get you paid in a very short period of time. But in order to do that, I need to know what do you owe on the property. That's it. In order for me to construct the deal, I need to know what's owed on the property. Now, we're going to get into negotiations later, and if we're going to take the resort to a higher authority approach, meaning you're just going to act as a front person, and guys, I do it all the time. Remember the story I shared with you when I'm driving down the street? By the way, I'm in Florida a lot, okay? And I was driving down the street on the highway, and I saw the big building, and it had the banner on the side of it, for sale. Remember? Remember that? The whole thing is when you're on the phone with these people, just keep your posture, and part of negotiation is just to tell them, say, look, this is either going to happen or it's not going to happen. But I use the resort to a higher authority approach, and I tell them, I say, look, I'm just here trying to gather the facts. Part of the facts are we need to know what you owe on the property to see if we can construct the right deal. And if he says, well, I don't understand why that's relevant. Why do you need to know what I owe? Then I tell him, well, look, in most cases, it's a matter of public record anyway. Right? Now, whether it is or whether it isn't, it could be. And a lot of times it is. And it's not really a big deal. And if you tell him, look, it's not really a big deal, and then what you do, let's say he's asking $2 million for the property, right? What I do is I say, well, let me ask you, do you owe over $1 million on the property? I don't feel like telling you. Okay, that's fine. Well, then I imagine you probably owe more. That's fine. Do you owe, are you right at $2 million? Because I don't want to come in and submit an offer if it's less than what you owe. No, I don't owe that much. Okay. Well, then you probably owe around $1 million. Yeah, about that. Okay. Well, I could go ahead and put an offer in. That's not a problem. Let me ask you, how long have you owned the property for? And you start getting to probing questions. When we get into negotiations, you're going to hear it. Probing questions are, how long have you owned it for? Were you managing the property? Do you have a professional management company there? Then what we do is we back right into it and say, okay, so you owe right under $1 million or right over $1 million? I owe just under $1 million. I owe $995. Oh, okay. And they'll tell you because they're going to want to talk. They're going to want to get the deal done. They just want to feel comfortable with you. So when you call on the property information sheet, you don't just want to go right down the list and go, how much do you owe? Is there utilities to site? That's not the way it's done. It's done through conversation. So when we get through negotiations, you guys will feel comfortable about that. But I'm giving you some food for thought now because I really want you to understand how important it is to figure out the loan balance. And the reason being is simple. Under that scenario that I just mentioned, if he's asking $2 million for the property and we're going to buy it at let's say 30 cents on the dollar, all right? We're going to go in and offer $600,000 on a $2 million property, and he says no. And he says no because he owes $650,000. Then basically we just shot ourselves in the foot when we could have still got the property for a little bit more. So when we get into negotiations, I'm going to pick it apart with you guys and share with you how we go ahead and figure out how much cash he needs now and how much cash he needs later, which limits our cash in. All right? You guys are going to get real excited about that part, right? Absolutely. Negotiations are very powerful. There's nobody else on the planet teaching negotiations, and of course nobody out there as a master negotiator like myself, as we know. Okay. So if you don't know the debt owed, you should never make an offer until you do, okay? Often the offer you make will be determined from the debt owed. Like I said, always, okay? Even if it's an all-cash offer, you should still check to make sure it isn't higher than the existing debt, as the story I just shared with you. You got to make sure that your offer isn't going to be actually that's lower than the existing debt. Make sure it's higher. Make sure that it's not lower. Okay. Now the next one, this factors into your offer as well, guys, because if you don't know the repairs, how are you supposed to be able to calculate the right offer? Remember the story I told you about? The guy, he did something called a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, meaning he went ahead and took property. He had capital gains tax he was going to have to pay, so he took money out of his property and he had to place it. You got only a certain amount of time to recognize another opportunity, another project, and you have to put your money right into that property. So he went to an auction, threw him down an auction block. Anybody been to an auction here? We'll talk about auctions later. They're great, okay? They're great. It's a big dog and pony show. People screaming and hollering, hooting and hollering. People are on emotions, and it becomes as people want to find out, people want to find out that they're the winner. Everybody wants to be the winner. So everybody's bidding higher and higher and higher. Next thing you know, they're overbidding for the property. So, and those auctioneers do a great job of that. When it comes to repairs, you need to know the repairs. Is it a light cosmetic fixer or a major rehab? In this particular scenario, when this guy purchased this at an auction, he factored in, they said in the due diligence that they did for him, which was very weak due diligence. When we talk about auctions, we're going to discuss exactly packaging and when we move forward on certain auction packages and when we don't, and the things you got to watch for, okay? But for this particular deal, this guy had to place his money. He was desperate to place his money. And what he did was he looked at the due diligence package, and it said $300,000 and change to get it done. And the guy was a contractor by trade. So what did he think? He thought he'd get up there and go ahead and replace the hole himself, repair it, put up his 2x4s or his whatever he's going to do and resheath the roof and do this. And then he's going to get in there and he's going to bring somebody in and replace the kitchen and do the flooring. And he really thought he was going to cut corners and get it done. But when he went in there, he figured that it was a hole. That thing was a hole, guys. It was a Grand Canyon hole. And what happens in places with property that had something called seasons, which we don't have here in California, it's always right around 70 and perfect, of course, except for today it's raining. The repairs turn out to be $3 million. Now, I'll tell you right now, mold remediation is expensive. Mold remediation on a house, okay, and I know this because one of my houses has had mold remediation. It can range anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000 just for a house. So think about this building, that assisted living, people that already have needs for care. Imagine the type of insurance that you need on that, and to get that insurance covered, you need to go through all kinds of loopholes to get it done. Now, we didn't mind doing it because we bought the thing at 25% of appraised value. But again, $300,000 opposed to $3 million is going to put a monkey wrench in the program when you're looking to make your offer. Do you agree? Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So you need to know the repairs. Again, the number of repairs will have a huge influence on your offer of what you can offer. Okay. You don't have to know the exact number, but you should have a ballpark figure. Guys, $300,000 to $3 million is nowhere near a ballpark figure. Okay. $300,000 to $400,000, that's a ballpark figure. $400,000 to $600,000, that's even stretching it. But $300,000 to $3 million, that's just a poor guesstimate. Now, won't be any repairs for vacant land, but you should always have an idea what the building costs will be, and you can always ask the right people. Some of the right people to ask are the brokers or owners, okay? Now, this goes for buildings and for land, all right? When it comes to buildings and land, something to understand is that people look at property all the time. Conventional wisdom has always told people to do the Warren Buffett theory, which is swing every so often and look at a lot of pitches. Well, these big companies out there, big companies, I'm talking about companies that have money in their organization, REITs, real estate investment trusts, they place money on buy properties, humongous portfolios of properties. These companies don't mind dropping big dollar to do due diligence. They'll easily go out there and spend $100,000 on a property with the bat of an eye to make sure that it's a deal for their investors, to make sure that it's safe for their investors. And then they'll walk away. They'll walk away from the property because it's got XYZ on it. And XYZ could be mold remediation. XYZ could be hole in the roof. XYZ could be the property had a slight issue and they didn't want to go ahead and move forward with it. XYZ could be vacancy problem because they have a management company in there that told them there's no way you're possibly ever going to fill this up because we tried. We tried one time to fill it up and we never could fill it up. That one time we tried. Okay? And that's what brokers do quite often because brokers want the low-hanging fruit. They do. They want to get in with speed and ease and get deals done to make their money. They do not want to go work hard to sell some piece of junk. Okay? Used car salesmen are things of the past, folks. People want to sell brand new Mercedes that sell themselves. That's the money. That's where the money's made. Sell the good projects. That's what brokers want to do. So when you call these brokers and you get these brokers to be bird dogs, they're going to jump up and down for joy because now they've got somebody that can perform on a liability. You understand the power of that? Man, you guys are in the right place at the right time. I'll tell you that. You really are. Ask the broker owner if there was any existing plans in place, guys, because these groups that are out there and spending this money on this due diligence, I'm telling you, it's far more than pre-contract due diligence. I mean, these people will go to the trouble. For instance, I had a property and it had issues with wetlands. And I'm not going to get into it. It's out of the scope of right now. We're going to talk about wetland delineation later and how Walt Disney made his fortune. By the way, Walt Disney never owned anything in his own name. It was all under Mickey Mouse. And a bunch of other entities. And entity structuring we'll talk about too. But guys, think of the power of this. We looked at the deal and we said, wow, that deal is going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot to get that done. And then I said, well, let's follow my rules. Ask them if anybody else took a look. Turns out there was a huge group that took a look at this property. They did due diligence that could choke a horse. I mean, they spent well over 6 figures on due diligence. They had wetland delineation studies. They had feasibility studies, absorption rate studies. They had phase 1, which is environmental, we're going to talk about later. Then a phase 2, we're going to talk about that. Endangered species reports. How to go ahead and take water from one piece of land and replace it with other land to dedicate that water to free that up, and the impaction study until they know when they could build on it, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was so in depth. I looked at this and I said, this stuff scares me. My rule is I want to look at one page. I don't want to look at any of this stuff. So I brought in the professionals. They looked at it. It was a big job. Unfortunately, it did not fall into my speed and ease theory of getting it out, get rich within 12 months, 24 months max. So we passed on it. And my point being is that deals out there, they're plentiful. And a lot of times other investors go sniff the deal and then walk away because it doesn't meet their retail buyer, conventional wisdom investor type theory. So figure out the repairs. You want to jump on those repairs. Know those repairs. All right. So when we know the repair costs, we'll be able to factor in a much better offer. Okay? So let's go ahead and switch over to number 39, page 39 here. Now we touched on how to determine the R of an ADV the other day, if you remember, and we did talk about how property, the value of property is appraised. We went over raw land, which is comparable sales. We talked about apartments, which is cap rate, office building, which is cap rate and square foot comps, retail centers, which are cap rate and square foot comps. We went over this. And mobile home park and RV parks, which is the cap rate and the land comps. And we wanted to say know what to buy, when to buy, how much to pay, and how much to profit. Okay? It's really important to know the key ways to finding those top 1% deals and analyze. Many of them have a system to filter the trash and the cash, and that is the system that we're going to be discussing over the next day and the next day or two here. Okay, so next page, page 40. General evaluation process. Is this a suspect or is this a prospect? Okay. Number 1, guys, write these down. Gather property facts and determine equity and profit. We have to gather the facts to determine what equity we're going to be getting, because remember, we want equity and huge upside. So you need to gather the facts, determine the equity, and then determine the profit. It's all about the profit. It's all about the ROI, the return on our investment. Money in, money out. All right? Remember, your own money, but it's money in, money out.